So there's quite a bit to talk about when it comes to Insurgency Sandstorm. Namely, I believe that June 16th marks a turning point for this game, and I'm going to discuss why this could be a good thing or a bad thing. But before I really get into that, let's go ahead and talk about the recent update that just came out. Operation Nightfall is the one that I'm referring to, because there's a lot of things that I like about it, but then there's other things that kind of really annoy me. So yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that. Also, what I'm going to be talking about in this video is some recent events that happened and some other things that subscribers have suggested. So yeah, let's get into it. For those of you that are unaware, they just released an update that finally, after nearly 2 years, brings night maps to the game. So now every map is able to actually turn dark, and we're able to use tac flashlights on the front of our rifle or have IR laser sights, which allows us to turn the gun over to the side so that we can actually aim with the IR laser sights, which is pretty cool. The only time that I've ever actually seen that was in Modern Warfare. There's 4 different types of goggles. You got a green one, a white one, a dark red one, and a yellow one, with 2 different variations of goggles. And if I had to give any criticism, I would say that the goggles can be very bright when you're looking at light or fire, to the point of blinding, even though I'm looking at like the tiniest of fires. Like, I guess it makes sense, but is that actually how night vision goggles are supposed to be? Blinding when you look at the tiniest of lights, and then when you're in an area that doesn't have too many lights, it looks ridiculously dark. I mean, I understand that night vision goggles needs like some sort of light source to actually bounce off and, you know, so you can see in the dark, but I don't know, I think I just prefer the goggles from Ground Branch than the ones that are here, because here I'm just either not seeing what's going on or I'm getting blinded. But when they work, it still is pretty cool, so I mean, glad that they're here. So night vision goggles isn't the only thing that they added. They added in a couple of new weapons. They added in the Grease Gun, Honey Badger, AS Val, Sterling, and the Well Rod. There is a chance that they might have added more, but those are the only ones that I know of. Out of all of them, I would say that the odd man out here is the Well Rod, because I was seeing a whole lot of people prefer something like a revolver or a 5.7 to that of the Well Rod. And you know, I was kind of thinking the same thing. I mean, the Well Rod is a cool weapon and all, but I just can't see anybody that's actually playing in multiplayer or co-op actually decide to use that weapon, where every time you have to literally cock back the weapon, which takes quite a bit to actually cock back. So the weapon requires you to be precise when you're shooting, but I can only imagine when someone is switching to the sidearm that they would be in a sticky situation. So like, you run out of ammo with your primary, and then you quickly switch to your sidearm and start shooting, bang, 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 bang. But at that point, you wouldn't be using the Well Rod unless you decided to go in the game with it to begin with. It just feels like a very odd choice. Like, the only time that I would ever think to actually use this type of weapon is in like a stealth mission. And then I remember that Insurgency Sandstorm was going to have a single player story or a campaign that was later canceled, and I wonder if this is where that came from. Just another reminder of why I wanted to buy this game, but you know, this is where we're at. They brought on a new map, which isn't really new. It's more of a rehashed map from Insurgency 2014. I gotta be honest, I'm not entirely sure how different it is from the original, but I do know the map when I see it. Is it a good map? Yeah, I would say that it was good. It's about the same as how I remember it. I feel like somebody should do like a video, just like a comparison of the maps, just to see what's actually different, aside from, you know, upgrading the graphics and making the buildings look slightly more detailed. Like, what did they do to make the map better? Because there's a lot of maps from the 2014 edition that I know a lot of people had issues with. But yeah, side note, there were a couple of images that seemed really like stretched out for some reason. Like, they didn't have the right size for that little section or something. There was like a picture of a gun, but it looked all stretched out, like as if the gun was like 240p but was stretched across a 1080p screen. That's what it kind of looked like. Like, I don't know what was up with that. But yeah, overall the update was pretty good, but again, I just kind of wish that it was something that was done a long time ago, and I'll get into why later on, because it kind of feeds into another thing that I want to talk about. So let's really quick get into some news here. So for those of you that don't know, the console version of Insurgency Sandstorm has been delayed. I'm a little late on this, but here's what they say. While development of the console version has been on a good track, we will be unable to launch the PlayStation 4 or Xbox versions of Insurgency Sandstorm on August 25th, 2020. We know that this is disappointing and frustrating news for those of you who have been waiting for the console release, and we know you have been waiting a long time to hear from us. We aim to make use of the additional time to improve the day one experience of our company's first ever console title. This additional time will allow us to deliver a more complete and optimized version of the game, as well as explore the exciting possibilities of a next-gen console release, in addition to the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. We will keep our community updated as and when we get new information, and the new release date will be communicated via our social medias and console newsletters. Yeah, so back as far as I can remember, when the game launched, optimization has almost always been a big issue. And I think I remember talking about this in a previous video, how if they don't fix the problems that are here now on the PC, then there's a good possibility that it'll spread to the console when they eventually launch it. So yes, I am in favor of this delay because the optimization has definitely gotten better over time. I wish the PC version had gotten delayed about a year or two so that they could have had a more playable game at launch, added in that single player story mode, had night maps at launch, had mods in place at launch, remastered all the maps from the previous game, had every single game mode that was featured in the previous game put into this one, because they keep featuring new maps, quote unquote, and new game modes, quote unquote, as if they're new content, as if we haven't seen them before, or that's what it feels like sometimes. Like, to give an example, in one of the recent videos that they showed on their channel, they did a bit of a snippet on one of the quote unquote new maps, but it's just really a remaster of Tell, a map that was featured in Insurgency 2014. Now, I'm not necessarily against the idea of remastering old maps and bringing them into the newer one. I really just would have liked it if they had brought in all the older maps into the newer one at launch so that they can focus on newer and different types of maps, newer game modes, newer guns and skins, maybe newer mechanics, you know, just really explore outside of Insurgency 2014. Like I've said this before and I'll say it again, but when you're making a game that's supposed to be the second iteration of its predecessor, I expect it to be bigger and better. When I played Fallout 1, I thought that it was an amazing game, and I really couldn't think that Fallout 2 could top it, but I was surprised because it was bigger and better. That's honestly the thinking that I had going into Sandstorm. I was thinking that, well, Insurgency 2014 was a really good game, I wonder how they're gonna top it. And the truth is that they really haven't, at least not until recently. Like, they're getting closer and closer to a remaster of 2014, but it's not quite there yet. I mean, am I crazy for thinking that? I mean, the main reason why I wanted to get Insurgency Sandstorm was because they were supposed to be doing a single player story mode. I was like, oh, well, this is gonna be interesting. The guys over at NWI have never done this sort of thing before. It'd be interesting to see where they take this. I was honestly expecting this game to be more ambitious than Insurgency 2014, but as far as I've seen, it's been a major step backwards, especially at launch. And for the longest time, there was like a long drought in content. I mean, that Operation Nightfall was a pretty big content drop, but what did we actually get there? Stuff that I feel should have been day one. I mean, this is not the first time they dropped a night map. We first saw those back in October of 2019, but then they took it away. Makes me wonder what the hell's going on with the decision making. But you know what? I get it, okay? I know why they didn't go through with a lot of these ideas. It's because they're an indie studio. It's because they didn't have the resources. It's honestly understandable, but it's like, if you didn't have the resources to do it, then why did you hype me up for this story mode? Why did you hype me up, you know, for a game that wouldn't receive a whole lot of updates until recently? In my opinion, I think that Insurgency Sandstorm could have been a much better game. That's not to say that it's bad now, but it could have been a lot better at launch. But that's just not where we're at. No. Insurgency Sandstorm is a game that didn't launch into early access, but it acts like it did. Insurgency Sandstorm launched as a full-fledged game that is apparently going to get better over time. I wish somebody would have told me that before I decided to buy into this game, because what I'm about to talk about next, I honestly can't justify. So June 16th, 2020 marks a turning point for this game, because this was the day that they decided to add in a form of monetization, or as they call it, mini DLCs, or as I call it, a form of microtransaction. So given that all we know about all the ideas that were canceled, and for the longest time we haven't received a whole lot of updates until recently, I just can't justify this move. I mean, I know that this isn't the first time that NWI has incorporated some form of monetization. Like, people are gonna pull up the examples of DOI or Day of Infamy, but the difference between Sandstorm and Day of Infamy was a full-fledged game compared to the launch of Insurgency Sandstorm, and their monetization actually gave you more bang for your buck. I don't think that Insurgency's new monetization is egregious at the moment, but I definitely feel that DOI did a better job in incorporating more bang for your buck. I honestly think that if the base game was like a complete remaster of Insurgency 2014 and they added all those things that are featured in the current game now on top of that, along with the other things that I explained earlier, then I would have accepted these little microtransactions with open arms, because they seem very reasonable and the cosmetics actually look pretty cool. But again, I just can't justify them. But I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter at this point what I think, because they're already in the game. This is literally the point of no return. I can only hope that they don't get egregious in the future and that they actually use the money that they're getting anything to bring more content to the game, because they will get a whole lot of money. That I know for sure, because, you know, I might as well buy it because it's relatively cheap. Wait a minute, $3 for one skin. Maybe I'll hold off on it. But those are just my thoughts on the recent events for Insurgency Sandstorm. What are yours? Are you someone that likes all the updates that came out? Do you despise the idea of mini DLCs? Let me know down below. If you're someone that enjoys the fact that I cover games like Insurgency Sandstorm, why don't you go ahead and like the video, comment down below, and share. If you're someone that's new, go ahead and subscribe and ding the bell. If you would like to support the channel, check out my Patreon. Just send $2 a month. With YouTube's monetization, you never know how low my income will go. With that all being said, I want to thank everybody for coming out to watch, and I guess I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.